Okay, I think probably one of the problems with this debate is that the true costs and the benefits are highly uncertain about membership or Brexit. We do know that there would be a direct saving. This figure is well documented, the £8.5 billion per year if we were to leave, if we were to have a Brexit. But there's also huge costs associated with not being a member of the European Union and with the Brexit. So, for example, lower domestic investment, which would be driven by higher uncertainty. Lower foreign direct investment, because clearly when people come, they want to step in stone into Europe. The depreciated pound, Goldman Sachs have estimated it could drop by 20%. A drop in sterling assets, higher inflation for households, and also the financial volatility, because there will be capital flight from the UK whenever there is a big economic shock, and this will be a bump in the road, there's no doubt about it, economically. Does the panel agree that the costs associated with Brexit could easily outweigh the £8.5 billion of the savings? Vernon, we'll start with you.
Start with me. No, sorry. That's a good one. I think that's true. I mean, look, I agree with that, and it's interesting this because the figure originally from the Leave campaign was £19 billion would be the cost. But of course, that then didn't net off the rebate and didn't net off the money coming back to the UK from the EU. So we then got to a more agreed figure, which was £8.5 billion. But of course, what that then, it's not just a zero-sum game, this. It's about exactly the point about what's the value added to the UK by being a part of the European Union. And all of those things that you've mentioned, along with jobs, along with the service and the access to the markets, that gives you a huge sorts of benefits to the UK that you get, and of enormous benefit to our country. But it goes back to what I've said before about this positive view of the European Union, and the generational gap that there is enormous with this sort of thing. You talk to young people, it's not just about statistics, it's about them feeling that they want to be a part of a Europe of countries cooperating together to solve common problems, whereas with respect to people of my age or older, it goes to a loss of sovereignty, and there's a real conflict with this. So of course it's a matter of statistics. Of course it's a matter, as you pointed out, about how much is paid in, what comes back, and all of those sorts of things. But it's also a positive view of what an independent country, working with other countries across Europe to bring about greater prosperity for our own country and for the whole of Europe, and actually tackling problems across the world. That's what excites and inspires people as well. And we have to talk about those things, as well as letting the statistics clash, and it being a battle between a pound here or a pound there, or whatever it is. And I think that's also got to be a part of the debate as we move forward to the 23rd of June.
Okay. Owen, how do you see the costs of the Brexit playing out?
Well, I see a huge gain. First of all, we get back 9.8 billion clear. That's the net that goes in, which we never get back.
So it's not 8.3.
But the money that we do get back is given back to us under very tight conditions. So you talk about the CAP, cash. They didn't like the way in which the last Labour government introduced CAP reform, and £600 million has gone back. That is real money. That's 2 hospitals sent back because of the capricious manner in which this system works. The week before I was fired, a case cropped up in South Wales, which is very relevant to Port Talbot, actually. And there's a coal mine there, burning a particular type of coal, which is very important for the steel industry. And it didn't really emerge exactly what had gone wrong. And I left the office before I had a chance to talk to the Commissioner. It looked like there had been a change in translation, where there was a nuance in a very, very mild way, which changed the impact of pollution laws on this particular coal mine. 2,000 jobs up for grabs. There was absolutely nothing that we knew about it, and I, as the Democratic elected Secretary of State, would have had to go to the Commissioner to try to plead our case. So there are enormous gains in this. You don't go to a single farm, you don't go to a single fishing village. What did the fishermen say today? They said, we're fed up with all the restrictions. The FSB, wherever the hoarding is, you never go to a small business without people railing on at you about the cost of regulation. Now, I don't agree with John's comments on this. We got our rollback pushing with allies at the global level. We could get some of these things changed. The Norwegians don't chair that Fish and Fish Products Committee just for fun. They chair it because they make jolly sure that world regulation, which cascades back down through the EU, suits their industry. And we are represented on these bodies by 1/28 of a European bottom, which does not necessarily understand the circumstances of our economy
can we bring
or
you back
our
to the
environment.
costs? Can we bring you? Are you worried about the costs?
No, there's a huge gain for us. There's a massive...
You don't see any costs in terms of lower investment?
Well, you did the usual, we're all going to leap into a dark hole and the pound's going to crash.
But do you not see any costs?
ceiling's
No
going to fall in.
costs? Okay.
No, I don't. I see this as a very positive move that the UK, the fifth largest economy in the world, will rejoining the world. And all this little European stuff, this whole model is completely out of date.
Okay.
Monet cooked it up after the First World War. Laws and regulations are now made at the global level. We have a global economy, as John said. The great powers now emerging are China and India, going back to the 18th century.
John,
we need to be working with them.
John, any thoughts on the costs of Brexit?
Well, I'm a fund manager now, and in today's markets, I would say that the view on the economy in developed economies is pretty positive about Europe and also about the United States. The big risk is political. And the biggest political risk for investors now is the British referendum. And the next biggest political risk is the American presidential election. And if you have a situation where we choose to cut ourselves off from the EU, and you then have a shift towards protectionism in America, which looks as though it's coming, even if you don't get a Trump presidency, that would be a lethal combination for the UK. Be in no doubt. And I actually think that if anything, people are saying, well, these are all scare stories, but my frank opinion is they are understating the case.
Okay, Kate, would you like to
I agree with most of what Owen said. I don't think I've never quite understood this value added that we get from being in the EU. People kind of waffle about value added. They don't ever actually specifically say what we get from being in the EU that we would not be able to do if we were an independent country with not paying that huge amount in every day, literally. And the tragedy thing of the whole way that it works is that then we get this money back, and when I was sports minister and in the Home Office, we'd go around and you'd be opening things that said European Union, thank you to the European Union. And I would always say, hang on, that's our money. That's our money just back. Only they've decided it's going to be spent in that particular way. So I don't accept at all the arguments about the costs. I think actually we would be able to quite well, in a very positive way, survive, more so than survive, live very, very well outside the European Union. And most of all for our farmers in Northern Ireland, who I know very much are hidebound by the ridiculous things that come down from the EU, and I know that from coming from a farming background. And the idea that farmers have to be told by somebody sitting in Brussels when to put out their slurry, when they actually know more about what goes on the land than anybody sitting in Brussels. And these are the kinds of things that actually then we would be able to decide how we got that subsidy to farmers in a way that farmers themselves knew was the best way to spend it, rather than being told by some bureaucracy that in Brussels it's more about helping French farmers and Greek olive growers.
And I attended a debate recently in Dublin, and Ken Clarke was actually speaking at that debate, and he was peddling this idea, there's going to be so much uncertainty, if we do indeed vote to exit. But I think my response, I didn't get the chance to say it, was, well, if you want certainty, don't go into business. That's really not.
There's uncertainty and uncertainty.
Well, anyway, just
calculated risk, Jeff. Calculated.